Hello and welcome to Entrepreneur Journey. Today, my guest is Clayton Olson of Clayton Olson Consulting. A little bit about Clayton. Clayton Olson is an international relationship coach, author, facilitator. He delivers private virtual coaching sessions and leads online group workshops internationally, the UK, Asia, Australia, the United States, for both men and women. People see Clayton when they want to transform their romantic relationships in life, working with all stages of their relationship. All right, Clayton, tell us. I just told a lot about you, but tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah. Well, number one, thanks for having me. It's interesting because you mentioned romantic relationships in that bio. And I realized too, like over the last 8 years, it's definitely evolved to really beyond just intimate relationships and into relationships with anybody and everybody, and even relationships that one might have with themselves. The relationship one has with uncertainty, the relationship one has with fear. And I would say that I tackle all of those things when I work with somebody. And sometimes intimate relationship seems to be the gateway or the access point that I start with folks, and then it evolves beyond that. But yeah, I've been doing this for 8 years and really, truly enjoy it. It's, I would say, what I'm meant to do here. And it doesn't always feel like that. Sometimes there's it can be a humbling process working with people and being in the trenches with them. But overall, it's been a wonderful journey.
All right, so that sounds amazing. I have a few getting to know you questions.
Cool.
From what I've seen on your profile, it looks like you've traveled to a lot of great places. Tell me your
Yeah.
favorite place you've ever traveled to.
Yeah. So that would be a tie between two places that may have some similarities. It's a tie between Iceland and Switzerland. I am a sucker for mountains. I've been visiting the Rockies ever since I was a little kid. I live in Denver now, but I grew up in Chicago. My parents used to take me out to trips out west. And so the mountains hold a really precious spot in my soul. And I would say Iceland and Switzerland are two places that are some of the most surreal, have some of the most surreal landscapes that I've ever encountered. And there's something about just the ruggedness of both places that just kind of sets me free. And I feel like living there for an extended period of time would just, I'd probably never come back and be a changed man forever.
Sounds like I got to go because I've been to Boulder, and Boulder is one of my favorite towns in the entire United States.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Boulder's gorgeous. Yeah. Boulder, I've got a number of friends and fellow coaches that live up there.
Nice. So someone gives you a genie lamp with three wishes. What are those three wishes?
So, this is funny because I feel like my answers to these are definitely temporal. You could ask me maybe last week and it'd be something completely different. But today, what I think that the wishes that would serve my curiosity the best would be one, I'd love to have the ability to be invisible. I'd love the ability to be able to fly. And I'd love the ability to be able to time travel and have all of those combined simultaneously, because I would love to go back in time without messing up anything in the past, and just to be able to observe kind of the origins of like what happened with history, and maybe even the beginning of humanity, and just understand kind of where we came from, because I feel like that's shrouded in mystery. And yeah, just being able to time travel and be invisible and just observe, that would give me access to knowledge and wisdom that I don't know if anybody actually has, and it would definitely, give me something to think about for sure.
I love that, because if you think about going back in time, you have what people write in history books, but how much is missing? How much is fabricated?
Yes.
Honestly.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Right. I think they'd say the history is written by the people who won, right? The
right. Yeah.
conquerors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would love that same power. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Favorite style of cuisine?
I would say Thai. Yeah, I'd say
That's
Thai.
good.
Yeah, I was in Thailand at one point, and some of the Thai over there is just the amount of complexity and the flavors and the sauces and the curries is just it's something that I don't know how to duplicate with my own cooking. So whenever there's a Thai meal, it just is it's definitely one of my favorites. One of my favorites with my partners as well. Whenever we go out and to a restaurant or we do take out, Thai is kind of our go-to.
Nice. Tell us something on your bucket list.
This is a recent one as well. I would love to take a trip to space.
Ooh.
Yeah.
SpaceX.
So yeah, I would love to go and experience zero gravity and get the overview effect of being able to see Earth from that kind of meta perspective. I heard in the last year, I think there was a documentary made that the astronauts that have gone into orbit and look back at the Earth, there's this really profound psychological effect experience that happens where it just changes you. And there's something about being able to see your entire story right in front of you rather than kind of being a part of it, realizing that every memory that you've had, every experience, everything about who you are is suddenly right there at this like blue globe in front of you. I think that would just be an amazing experience. And I do think that's going to be possible in the next 10 to 15 years. And I'm ready to buy a ticket when they become available for sure.
Nice, nice. So tell us a little bit about how you became an entrepreneur.
Well, so it's interesting because I'd say the journey started when I was 18 years old. My father passed away when I was 18, and I got deeply into psychology at that point because that was a pretty rough time for me, and I felt like I was hitting a lot of different dead ends growing into an adult. And my mom passed me a book called The Structure of Magic, which was a book written by a guy named Richard Bandler, and it's about neuro-linguistic programming. Are you familiar with neuro-linguistic programming?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah. So I got into neuro-linguistics at 18, and the biggest takeaway that I got from that material and diving deeper into it was that I actually had the power to choose my experience. I might not be able to choose the circumstances and the events that happened to me in my life, but I have the ability to author the meaning and the experience that I therefore have of that circumstance and event. And that was so profound that it gave me incredible hope and had me dive deep into Tony Robbins and hypnosis and sales and influence and communication. And it really just lit me up in a way where I felt like I was beginning to pull on the threads of my life's purpose. At that point, coaching wasn't even like really in my reality. I think maybe it passed through my head every now and then, but like I always dismissed it as, this is something that I'm too young to do. I won't get the kind of respect, or people won't take me seriously yet because I'm not old enough. And that may very well have been a limiting belief, but that conclusion actually got me into sales. So I did some door-to-door sales for security companies down in Florida, which was definitely a spiritual experience, coming across rejection after rejection mm-hmm. and being out on my own in these neighborhoods. And then shortly after that, I jumped in with a couple different startups and worked in the market research arena, where I was selling market research solutions to enterprise level companies, helping them learn more about their customers and consumers. And I did that till I was about 29. And at that point, I realized that there was something else within me. I was wanting to have deeper, more gritty conversations with people. And I was also wanting to sell something different than market research solutions. So this kind of dormant desire of being a coach, suddenly these opportunities started to intersect. And I met a gentleman through a couple different folks that I was friends with at the time, who was running an internet marketing business, helping people get through breakups, recover from divorces, recover from devastating relationships. And I came on with him, and I learned how to write copy. I learned how to coach. I learned how to enroll people in coaching programs. And that was really the start. So I kind of came on as like a Robin to him being Batman, and was helping him grow this company. Now, I wasn't out there as a brand at that point, right? He was kind of directing me. I was still a bit of an employee because I wasn't his partner, but I was more like the executioner of his business in many ways, and taking care of things and being mentored. And we decided to part ways after about 2 years. And I realized, I was like, okay, it's time for me to really step into a content creator and to begin to put a message out there that will allow me to attract the clients and the kind of clients that I really want to work with. Now, I had a lot of experience working with people going through breakups at that time. So talking about relationships and talking about the different struggles in communication and the ways that we relate to others, it was something that I had gained some experience and practice doing. So naturally, the next step was for me to begin creating relationship content. And I started doing that on YouTube, and some of the videos started taking off, and I got more and more interest around what I was talking about. And people were contacting me to get questions they had about situations and high flame situations that they were in with their partners or being single. And I started working with them one-on-one. I built a few digital products at the time as well. So I could appeal to those folks that couldn't afford the coaching that I was offering, and kind of had a foot in both worlds where I was a bit of a digital marketer, simultaneously being a coach. And over the last, I'd say 5 to 7 years, there's been an evolution that's occurred where I still do some of the digital marketing, but really to take my coaching to the next level, it's almost like I had to let go of one of the rungs. I almost had to make a choice. Like, am I a digital marketer or am I a coach? And for the longest time, I was just holding on to both, but there was almost like a lack of effectiveness. I was like doing both things good, but I wasn't actually great at either one of them. And so I made a decision to make the digital marketing side of things secondary and started identifying as just a pure coach. And that's when I think that my entrepreneurial, like the freedom began to come on board, the money came, the fulfillment as well, from making that decision.
So I know that you've taken your company basically from 0 to 6 figures. Can you talk a little bit about the stages of that? And I think you might have just elaborated on it a little bit. About how that happened.
Yeah. So, I would say that where I'll begin talking about in the very beginning, I was doing phone calls with people where I was doing like one-off coaching calls with individuals. So they would come with a problem and they would purchase a single phone call from me. I also had a digital program that I was selling for $47. Now, without a lot of traffic, without a lot of people seeing the program or the opportunity to have a call with me, you need a lot of volume to get to 6 figures with those kind of offerings. And so I was starting to get more volume, but I was working my ass off to make that happen. And I was hustling. I was involved in a lot of busy work. It kind of felt like I was being very reactive in my business. I had calls littered on my calendar with no real structure. I'd had months where I'd sell a lot of this digital program and then months when I didn't. And there was just a lack of consistency and a kind of a lack of growth in the way that I wanted to happen. And it was very difficult to escape that. So I felt like I was working very, very hard for my money, which that state of being wasn't the best in allowing me to really be effective in the consulting that I was doing. Because if I'm burnt out and I'm not feeling resourced and not really enjoying it, it's hard to be there and hold a container for someone who is going through their own shit and they're looking for some guidance or some freedom. So I started hiring coaches at that point and working with folks who had the lifestyle and the kind of business that I wanted to emulate. I just didn't know how to get there. And through the course of the last few years, I stopped selling one-on-one coaching packages where I was just doing one call with them. And that's what I mean. I didn't stop selling one-on-one coaching packages. I stopped selling single one-off phone calls to folks. And I started lengthening the engagements to 3 to 6 months to even a year. And I also upped my prices considerably. And it seems at first, some of my objections to doing that was I was like, oh, well, this is kind of selfish, right? Like what, if I'm raising my prices and I'm extending people into longer agreements, that helps me out. But there was a part of me that was unsure how it would be effective for them. But to my surprise and fortune, I realized that I was doing my clients such a disservice by just having one-off single phone calls with them, and that these longer engagements that were actually more expensive changed the way that they showed up and listened to the conversations. It had them more invested, more engaged, more committed. And the longer we were in this committed partnership together with client coach, the more nuanced and powerful the coaching became, because I truly became a trusted advisor in their life. And I could see the subtle ways in which they were holding themselves back and the lies they were telling themselves that were having them play small. And so the coaching just became more and more potent. And some of the coaching relationships, I mean, I've got people that I've been working with for anywhere from 2 to 4 years now still. And these people are like not just my client, but they're like my friend. And the work is so much more enjoyable because of these deep relationships that I'm building with these clients. And the ironic piece about that too is I have more time. There's less pressure on me, and everything is just, it just flows. There's much more momentum. So as you can imagine, as my state of being and the way that I was relating to my clients and my work changed, the income naturally grew more and more. And I actually ended up working less and being more effective in making more money. And I would not have thought that that was possible. That didn't make sense to me at the beginning of the journey, how that could actually occur. But now it does in hindsight. And it was such a beautiful realization.
Awesome. So who would you say is who has been the biggest influence on you as far as your success?
I would say that my first mentor was incredibly influential on me, because one of the things that I got from him was, coming out of corporate, I had these interesting ways of showing up in business that were not actually congruent with being an entrepreneur. Even though I worked for startups, I wasn't actually in an entrepreneurial mindset. I didn't even identify as an entrepreneur. So there were some metaphors that he used, and he's like, look, we're not moving things forward like some big army. He's like, we're like the Viet Cong, doing like these, we're coming out of foxholes and we're striking, and we have to be nimble, we have to be flexible, we have to be, we have to wear multiple hats constantly. And it was that kind of mindset that had me step more into kind of where I could be more free in the way that I operated, and let go of some of these other beliefs that I had in the startup world, where I wasn't necessarily in a leadership position in the startup world. I wasn't like at C-level. So it allowed me to get way more into being a strategist and way more into being a visionary in the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, rather than just execute. And I think, and as I'm speaking right now, what I'm realizing is this, like the biggest thing I learned was that you can hustle your ass off, but if you're hustling your ass off in the wrong direction and you're not pausing and taking time to be in that kind of executive function where you're looking out over the business and really making the right moves, it doesn't matter how hard you work if you're going the wrong direction. And so that allowed me to begin to realize that free time and time to step back from the business and think about the business and ideate and be creative was way more effective than working 12-hour days every single day to try to get something done. It felt good at the time. It felt actually like, oh, well, if I'm working this hard, then something great has to come of it. But it's just, that's a fallacy. It's not actually true.
That is such a nugget of information. That's so true. You don't want to work hard in the wrong direction.
Yeah, right.
Because it just sets you back. You may have worked hard, but now you have to overcome where you went backwards. So
yes,
that is awesome. So I have a few questions around your area of expertise.
Cool.
Why did you decide to become a relationship coach?
It's funny. I feel like relationship coaching decided to become me in some ways. Okay. Like I'll switch that in a moment here. I wanted to get out of corporate because I felt like that environment, and particularly the company that I was working for, I could feel my soul almost beginning to crack, and it felt like it was
Mm.
dying. And so I was looking for a life raft at that point. And I had this inkling that I would be a great coach if I really put my mind to it. So I dove into what was an opportunity where a vehicle where I could practice doing that. And it happened to be working with people around breakups. And over time, I remember there being a very specific point where, after maybe a few months, maybe a year of working with people around breakups, I made a decision that I was going to be the best damn relationship coach that existed, just in my own head, right? It's not that I need to go broadcast that out and be in competition with people, but just that I was going to be the very best that I could possibly be at this, in this niche, because people were suffering, they were having tremendous issues, and they needed some support and some clarity. So I got into that. And over the last 8 years, what I really discovered, and this is, I think, really just a fascinating way that life works, is I realized that relationship is an intimate relationship is actually the biggest area of development for me, right? It's not like I came in as an expert. It's actually the thing that was, I think, my own spiritual journey, and it was the biggest area of development for me to learn about and dive deep into, because it would make the biggest difference in my life. So to this day, I see myself as a real student of relationship, and I'm constantly learning with my clients as well. You know, I find the conversations I have with my clients are just as valuable, and the things that we co-create together are insights that I take into my own life and I apply in my own relationship. So I feel like I'm in this in some ways. I mean, we could call it like karmic, or it's like my soul picked a path that knew that this is what I need to get handled in this lifetime. And so therefore, like I'm committed, and yeah, I'm very devoted to learning as much about this area as possible so that I can have a fulfilling life and fulfilling relationships.
Nice. Can you explain a little bit about your process as a relationship coach?
Yeah. So I alluded to this earlier. My background is in neurolinguistic programming. And so I use a lot of that as a foundation in my conversations with people. And ultimately, what I'm helping folks do is rewrite this identity level imprint that they might have about themselves being unworthy, flawed, not deserving of a loving relationship, feeling that they have to be a certain way or be something other than themselves to be loved and accepted. And my role as a coach in this field is to help them drop all of these false beliefs, drop this illusion, step more into being who they really are, and actually be loved for that, be loved for their authenticity, to help them find freedom in these relationships so that they can be themselves, that they can have a voice, they can state their needs, their boundaries, they can communicate through issues, and they can build a solid foundation that ultimately has love and relationship last. So I think that's kind of an overview of how I work with people. And a lot of this is coming into helping them come into total alignment with themselves so that they can show up that way. And I'm very fluid when I work with people. And this is kind of the one-on-one work that I do. Is it's very bespoke and prescriptive rather than leading people through some formulaic process. Mm-hmm. So whatever they're bringing to me, I see as a gateway or an access point to get into the programming, to get into the false beliefs or the limiting beliefs they have about themselves, and help them begin to question those and gracefully and delicately and respectfully shift those so that they can show up differently and start creating what they want.
That's amazing. So our audience is primarily entrepreneurs, and what entrepreneurs often suffer from is being married to their business. They're so driven to their business that they often neglect other relationships. So can you speak on how vital it is to have strong relationships when you're an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Well, if you're an entrepreneur and you're watching this, you probably know that being an entrepreneur can be a very lonely path, right? There's an incredible amount of freedom that I think one gains by being an entrepreneur. And sometimes that freedom comes at the cost of relationship. Now, I know for myself that one of the biggest things I took for granted was the community that I had in my last company. Even if I wasn't fully aligned with the vision or didn't feel like I was doing my life's work, the community and the relationships there were such an integral part of happiness. And so coming into entrepreneurship, I realized that, like, I had it in my head that I had to do everything myself, and that I was really out on my own. And so the last 8 years have been a process of me hiring the right people, forming the right alliances with business partners, people that I want to work with, people that I want to be in relationship with first, and then build something second. That has just made my life so much more fulfilling. And as far as an intimate relationship is concerned, my partner really is, she's my confidant. She she reflects back to me when I might be spiraling or kind of in my own echo chamber. She helps pop me out of it and see the big picture. And I don't think that I would have been able to get as far as I've gotten without her in my corner. And, it's interesting because even when we've had tough times and difficult issues, it's like I've been able to use that as insight to then build content as well. So I think it's worked out well for me to be in relationship and be a relationship coach, because there's so much that I'm learning and humbled by in my relationship that then I can transmute and change and turn into something that I might be able to give another person.
Nice. What do you see most often when it comes to relationship struggles?
A lack of transparency and a lack of honesty. And I don't necessarily mean outright lying, but I mean almost like emotional withholding. And emotional withholding also can look like a lack of authenticity in the relationship, where somebody doesn't feel like they can really bring their full selves into the relationship, or there's a certain lack of courage to love fully because of the risk that it requires to do that. And so I see people playing the game of relationship half-heartedly, and maybe not playing full out and not putting both feet in some way that they might not even be aware of. And that can create this kind of fracture in the relationship that they have, because they might have an avoidant style of relating. So they're kind of on their heels in relationship, or they're the opposite of that is a insecure or anxious style of attaching to relationship, where they're kind of leaning and they're kind of chasing. And both of those come down to really like not trusting their worth and not trusting their value, not being in touch with the inherent value and gifts that they have in relationship. So there's all these kind of compensatory behaviors that show up that are inauthentic, that they don't even know that they're doing, that are keeping love at bay, or actually just pushing their partner away, or pushing people that they want to get into relationship away. So cleaning that stuff up makes a huge difference, because often what people get when they're working with me, especially if they're single, is they realize that they don't need to be in relationship, that it's no longer like kind of a life or death thing, or that it's a failure on their part if they're single. They come into rapport with being exactly where they're at. And in that place, then the choices they can make around the people they choose to dance with in relationship, the types of relationships they want to build, they become much more at choice. And those relationships can then flourish from a place of love rather than like obligation and fear. Does that make sense?
It does. And I wish that I had known you sooner, because my best friend, I would have referred him to you. I have no idea what's playing in the background. I'm sorry, but I would have referred him to you, because he wanted to be married so bad that it really, just the idea of marriage, more than the person, I think, was what he was seeking. And I tried to tell him, but just going into it, he got married and it didn't turn out well. So
yes, and you're speaking exactly to this point. Like if we're attached and we're putting a sense of our own worthiness on, if I'm in a relationship, then I'll be happy, or then I'll finally feel like my life can start. We open up ourselves to be vulnerable in a bad way to picking the wrong person to just fill that role, and then end up on the other side realizing we're incompatible. So let's avoid that heartbreak, right? And get really down to the clear reason of like, why do you actually want to get into a relationship? Like, what do you believe it will do for you? And what do you want to give in relationship?
Yeah. Clayton, this has been a great interview. You have shared a lot of great insight into relationships.
And
If
thank
you
you.
want to reach out to Clayton, he has a YouTube channel with, I think, 164, 165,000 subscribers.
Mhm.
How else I'll put that link in the comments, but how else can they reach out to you, Clayton?
I love just having one-on-one conversations with folks. So you can always just email me, Clayton@ClaytonOlsonCoaching.com. That's just a great way to get the conversation started. And like you're saying, Doug, if you want to check out some of my content, check out my YouTube channel, and then email me if you feel inspired to.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Clayton.
Thank you, Doug.